Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we got to talk about New York City following the same playbook as the city of Chicago and deciding that they're going to close the border of New York City to migrants, despite the fact that they had all this talk and all this fanfare about how New York City is a welcoming city, we're a sanctuary city. If you come to our city, then guess what? You have a right to shelter. Well, it turns out all of that is for naught, and Eric Adams has issued an illegal executive order, emphasis on the fact that this is totally unconstitutional and completely illegal, to stop the migrant buses from the state of Texas. And the joke behind this is that he's totally not stopping them, but when you see the restrictions, you'll understand that this has the same exact objective and goal as the Chicago ordinance, even though both cities are saying that they definitely still want migrants. Wink, wink, just don't actually send them. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform. So let me recap the situation for you guys really quickly so we can get into the new updates. So many cities across this country, left-wing cities, designated themselves as sanctuary cities. And this had actually been something that has been happening for decades. Certain states, by the way, like New York State, also designated themselves sanctuary states, and during the Trump administration, because the evil orange man was an evil white racist, they doubled down, extending extra benefits to migrants. Now, for a long time, this was straight up virtue signaling, and you knew it was virtue signaling because if you look at New York City and the city of Chicago on a map, and then you look at the Mexican border, you understand that this was never actually meant for them to actually have to live up to this. Fast forward to the Biden administration. He runs on being soft on the border. We get a flood of migrants fraudulently claiming asylum at the U.S. border, and Governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, decides that he's not going to deal with this anymore. He's not going to pay for it out of pocket. He's not going to wait on these never coming federal government reimbursements, and he's going to ship them to the places that said that they wanted them, very notably New York City and Chicago, but there are other cities that are also receiving migrants, and this is a way for the voters of these programs nationally, the Biden strongholds, to actually feel the effects of his policies, because a lot of people vote for this because they never actually have to deal with the migrant crisis, and this has worked swimmingly. Eric Adams has been incredibly angry. Black voters have been angry at Brandon Johnson.
I don't want them there. Take them someplace else or send them back to Venezuela. I don't care where they go.
But specifically in the city of New York, this has resulted in a cut of the budget of every single agency by about 5% in order to cover the billions in just housing and feeding these migrants.
Mayor Adams unveils his first round of budget cuts and has promised the cuts are painful.
The 5% cuts across the board will affect every agency, sanitation programs, and school budgets. But the most dramatic effect will be on public safety and the police department.
And what makes this even more amusing is that the migrants are completely ungrateful, they're entitled, and they're demanding more. Remember, we covered an incident at the Watson Hotel where these migrants were being evicted and moved to a newly built shelter for them, but the migrants decided that was not good enough, so they staged a damn near riot outside of this hotel, started camping in front of it, because many of these migrants believe that not only do they have a divine right to defraud our asylum system, but they also, some of them at least, believe that they have a divine right to stay in luxury hotels in central Manhattan.
Desperation and fear spilled out onto West 57th Street tonight outside the Watson Hotel.
It's hypocritical to think that immigration is only for certain privileged countries and not for everyone.
These migrants housed here since they were bused to New York City are getting on the bus again. This time we're told they're being transferred to the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal in Red Hook, where cots have been set up, except they don't want to go. Pedro Duran, originally from Venezuela, arrived in New York in mid-October. He was already bused to Brooklyn, but said it was so cold he came back to the Watson, except he is no longer welcomed here.
Now, even more absurd, a bunch of the advocates for the migrants believe that not only do they have a divine right to stay at a hotel that is a luxury hotel in central Manhattan, but they also believe that they should seize the luxury apartments on Billionaires Row, some of the most expensive real estate on planet Earth, and turn it over to the people defrauding the asylum system. And no, I'm not joking about that. That was quite literally stated by an activist at that very same Leaving the Watson Hotel protest.
Volunteer advocates argue the city should put these migrants in some of the most expensive pieces of real estate in the world.
He could have easily, along with Governor Hochul, opened up all the vacant luxury apartments. We are on 57th Street right now. This is Billionaires Row. Half of the super towers on this street are empty.
Of course, that begs the question, who would pay for all those luxury apartments?
But the thing is, as the people of the great state of Texas know, as the people of many of the border states in this country know, talking about caring about migrants is cheap. Caring about migrants, actually spending the money to put them up, that gets really expensive. So Eric Adams has been looking for ways, and Brendan Johnson has been looking for ways to not actually have to live up to their principles. And like Brendan Johnson issued a month ago, what they decided that they were going to do is pass ordinances, or in this case, sign an executive order, in order to essentially make it illegal for buses to drop off these migrants. And if you don't believe that's what's going on, let's actually look at what is in the Adams order, which is actually harsher than what was in the Chicago order.
Teresa, Natasha, Mayor Eric Adams announcing an executive order just about an hour ago. Let's break it down. It will require three things. First, it will require that charter buses transporting migrants give New York City at least 32 hours advance notice that they are arriving. Two, it will require that these charter buses arrive only between 8:30 a.m. and 12 p.m., Monday through Friday. And three, all buses can only drop off migrants at one designated spot.
Now look, on its own, I'm actually in favor of immigration restrictions. I live in the city of New York, am not a fan of coming across all of these migrants in my city. I'm not a fan of my tax dollars going to cover their divine right to luxury hotels while they demand to be in Billionaires Row. But the thing is, there are no such restrictions for migrants entering this country, and that's kind of the heart of the whole issue. The state of Texas does not get 32-hour warnings. The state of Texas does not get them to show up at one point between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and noon. And the state of Texas does not get weekends and holidays off.
Two, it will require that these charter buses arrive only between 8:30 a.m. and 12 p.m., Monday through Friday.
From this surge of migrants at their particular borders. But all of a sudden, when New York City, who is all in favor of open borders, actually has to deal with some of the consequences of those open borders, they decide that they want all of these restrictions. I mean, let's be honest about this. 8:30 to noon, Monday through Friday, that's absolutely no time at all. One designated drop-off point, Grand Central Bus Terminal, that's almost no opportunities to drop off migrants. What this is all about, and the 32-hour notice, by the way, is preventing people from coming to the city of New York. And unlike the city of Chicago, which just had fines per illegal immigrant on these buses, and by the way, also required a manifest that had detailed information, because, you know, the city of Chicago can't let migrants in unless we know exactly who they are. Eric Adams has actually attached a criminal penalty to this, making it a misdemeanor to drive buses full of migrants into the city of New York. Isn't that amazing that the Democratic Party that ran on decriminalizing illegally entering the United States of America is now reinstituting those criminal penalties when they come via buses from other states in this union? And if you're thinking, wait a minute, that is insanely and absurdly unconstitutional, you are exactly right. But the thing is, Eric Adams doesn't really care. Brendan Johnson doesn't really care. What they're trying to do is halt the flow of migrants now in order to have them not be in the city. And if that gets ruled unconstitutional in the future, then so be it. They just want to delay and keep these migrants and have them resettled in the state of Texas, in other red states, in other border states, so that they can still claim they're open to migrants, however, not actually live up to those claims.
Mayor Eric Adams says bus companies that fail to do so could face a Class B misdemeanor, possible fines, a lawsuit, and these buses could be impounded.
Again, a Class B misdemeanor, and if you guys are unaware, it's A, B, and C, so that's the second highest misdemeanor. Fines impounding of the buses, and all these other consequences if you don't drop migrants off at these designated checkpoints at this specific time with the notice, and all the things that the United States of America never gets when it comes to migrants just flooding the border, attacking the border of the United States of America, swarming it, whatever you want to call it. You've seen the videos, and I think this is an absolutely absurd standard for the city of New York to have, and for the state of New York to have. If you want to be against migrants, then come out more forcefully against Joe Biden, against his administration. Stop saying that you want these people to be able to work much, much faster.
All three mayors are asking that the federal government provide additional federal aid to come up with a plan to resettle migrants across the country, and for the feds to expand work authorization so migrants can get to work faster.
Because that's just a magnet for them, and start saying that we need to actually have border security. Now, Eric Adams has come a little further on this journey, so has Governor Kathy Hochul, to give them credit where credit is due, but Brendan Johnson of the city of Chicago is doubling down, even though he created this particular policy that now all these other left-wing cities are starting to copy, and we see right through it.
This comes after 14 buses arrived from Texas in just one night last week, the highest number recorded by the arrival center. And in just the last 2 weeks, more than 7,200 migrants arrived here in the city.
Now look, is it a lot of migrants? For sure. Is it creating chaos in the city of New York, strain on the budget? For sure. But remember, this is exactly what the state of Texas has had to deal with for years. They've asked for answers from the federal government, whether it be Republican or Democratic administrations, and they've been bucked over and over and over again. And the Biden administration is significantly worse on this particular issue because remember, he announced that his big dollar amount that was going to go to pay the cities for this immigration crisis was just $1 billion to be spread out over cities across the 50 states in this union. This is while immigration cases, which I believe were at peak 1.2 million in the backlog under the Trump administration, have now surged over 3 million because all of these migrants know the exact trick. They come to this country, they go up to Border Patrol, they're not trying to sneak past anymore, and they say that they need asylum, they have fear. Me and Nuance Bro actually solved these people in person at the Phoenix airport. They just have a box checked for fear, and then they're admitted to the United States and given flights by these organizations into the interior of the country, and enough is enough. If you want these migrants here, if you're going to advocate for them, then you should have to pay for them, and if the voters don't like it, they need to change how they vote, and that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I hope the outcome will actually be from these migrants being shipped across this country. But let's be real, Eric Adams and Brendan Johnson, and soon the mayor of Denver, soon the mayor of DC, are all putting up literal roadblocks in order to prevent these people from coming in. And although Abbott is trying to fly them in, that is not a perfect solution. That is not going to solve all of the problems. That's not going to be the best way to get around this, because the point of this whole stance that they're taking in New York and in Chicago is that they don't actually want these migrants.
But this is a national problem that has only been exacerbated by Governor Abbott's cruel, inhumane politics, and that requires additional national solutions. The federal government must take responsibility and lead on this humanitarian crisis instead of leaving it for cities and localities to handle.
Now, obviously, one of the go-to moves, I've been hinting at it, I've been talking about it throughout the course of this video, is to attack Texas Governor Greg Abbott, to call him an evil white racist, to say that he's making this worse, he's using these humans as a pawn. But the thing is, as we've covered on this channel multiple times, the percentage of migrants being sent to New York City and to Chicago by Texas Governor Greg Abbott is actually comparatively small to the total number of arrivals that are making it to these cities. The thing is, migrants want to come to New York City. They want to come to Chicago. They are fully aware of the fact that New York City has a right to shelter, and many other more sensible cities will not put you up in the most expensive hotels in their major thoroughfares like the city of New York will. They're fully aware of the fact that Chicago passed that welcoming ordinance, which means they're no longer checking citizenship status when they're handing out welfare benefits. When you break down the numbers, what you find out is although the Texas shipping of migrants is getting great fanfare, comparatively, most of these migrants just want to go there and they will move there on their own based on the fact that there are benefits that are drawing them there. So you have to change up your policies if you want these migrants to no longer be there. But the thing is, Adams doesn't want to do that. Johnson doesn't want to do that because they want to save face on this issue. But the thing is, even if you get somehow the Texas governor to stop, you can't have it both ways. Either you're a sanctuary city or you're not. Either you want the migrants to come because they're going to enrich every aspect of your city by living in the most expensive hotels and trashing them, or they're a burden on the taxpayers and you don't want them shipped into New York City repeatedly over and over again. This is a ridiculous absurdity being put forward by these major cities. If I were the Texas governor and they were doing this to my bus companies, I would seek an immediate injunction against the city of Chicago, against the city of New York, to stop them from doing this, because obviously it is wildly unconstitutional to restrict buses based solely on the contents of their passengers, based on their origin state, because we have freedom of movement from within the United States of America. It is kind of amazing to me that these people never cared about borders. They don't care about the U.S. border. They still want the migrants to come and flood in Texas and in Arizona and in all the states that they're not in charge of. But as soon as you infringe on their borders, as soon as you deliver the border crisis that they asked for, that they campaigned for, to their door, all of a sudden, they have all of these creative solutions for immigration restrictions. All of a sudden, the Democrats have figured out how to control a border. They figured out that enforcement works. They figured out that criminal penalties work, that fines work, that we need to know who these people are before they enter our territory. It's absolutely amazing. Credit to Texas Governor Greg Abbott for not only doing this, but not backing down after these ordinances were put into place for flying migrants in, and for responding to the city of Chicago by just dropping off the migrants right outside the city limits in the suburbs so that the wealthy liberals can actually feel the extent of the wrath of the governor of Texas and feel the extent of the consequences of what they've been voting for.
Now, the mayor of Chicago said that he also instituted similar rules requiring certain drop-off times, and it prompted Abbott to then send buses of migrants to the suburbs outside of Chicago. Some now voicing concern that something similar would happen in the suburbs here in New York as well.
Now look, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Absent the fact that this is a way for New York City and for Chicago and soon to be Denver, soon to be Washington, D.C. to obfuscate their own sanctuary city laws, their own sanctuary city ordinances, would it be nice for us on a federal level to get some notice of who's coming into our country, to be able to find the people, the nation of Mexico, that is subordinating these people being transported through their nation? Or should we just focus on the fact that it is insanely ridiculous and hypocritical and support Governor Greg Abbott in his quest to move the migrants to the people who ask for them, and more importantly, to make them the problems of the people who consistently vote for open borders candidates on a national level? Again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As usual, if you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about New York City closing their borders. Till next time.